The calendar on Maria's kitchen wall still showed March 2020, though it was already December. She hadn't had the heart to turn the pages, each month that passed taking something else from her. First, it was her job at the restaurant where she'd worked for 15 years. Then her father's funeral, which only 10 people could attend. Now, as snow fell outside her small apartment window, she sat alone on Christmas Eve, her phone silent, her family scattered across the country. Maria wasn't supposed to be alone. This was supposed to be the year she finally saved enough to visit her daughter Sophia in California. The year her grandson would take his first steps into her arms. The year everything would come together. Instead, 2020 had systematically taken apart every plan, every dream, leaving her with nothing but photographs and video calls that froze mid-sentence. 3 floors below, David Chen stared at his computer screen, the blue light reflecting off his glasses. His startup had collapsed in April, taking with it 5 years of work and most of his savings. At 32, he'd moved back with his parents, sleeping in his childhood room where posters of basketball stars still watched from the walls. The rejection emails had stopped coming, companies weren't even bothering to respond anymore. His mother knocked gently. "David, you should eat something." "I'm not hungry, Ma." She entered anyway, as mothers do, setting down a plate of dumplings made exactly how he liked them. "Your father and I were talking. Maybe you could help at the store." "I'm not giving up," David interrupted, his voice sharper than intended. "I just need one company to see what I can offer. Just one." In the hospital across town, Emma Rodriguez had been working for 18 hours straight. Her scrubs were damp with sweat, her feet ached, and behind her N95 mask, her face bore the indentations of too many shifts that never seemed to end. She'd lost 7 patients that week. 7 faces she'd gotten to know through the glass of the ICU doors. 7 families she'd had to call with news that broke her heart to deliver. During her break, she sat in the empty cafeteria, unable to eat. Her phone buzzed with another message from her roommate, "When are you coming home?" "I made soup." Emma typed and deleted several responses. How could she explain that she was terrified of bringing the virus home? That she'd been sleeping in her car for 2 weeks rather than risk infecting Sarah? That every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of patients struggling to breathe? These 3 lives, separated by floors and circumstances, might have continued in their isolated orbits if not for a piece of paper taped to the building's entry door on December 24th, written in shaky handwriting. It read: "Virtual Christmas Eve gathering tonight, 8 p.m. Building residents only. Let's not be alone. Zoom link below." The note was signed simply, "Your neighbor in 4B." Maria saw it when she went to check her mail, hoping for a Christmas card that never came. David noticed it when he finally ventured out for fresh air after 3 days inside. Emma discovered it at 3 a.m. when she finally returned, too exhausted to sleep in her car another night. None of them planned to join. Maria didn't understand Zoom. David wasn't in the mood for forced holiday cheer. Emma couldn't bear the thought of more human interaction after the hospital. But as 8 p.m. approached, something pulled at each of them. Maria struggled with her laptop, accidentally turning on various filters before Sophia had taught her the basics during their weekly calls. David joined with his camera off, prepared to leave after 5 minutes. Emma connected from her phone, propped against her coffee mug, still in her scrubs. The host was Henry from 4B, an 80-year-old widower whose grandchildren had set up his computer. "I know we're all strangers," he began, his voice crackling through the speakers, "but I figured strangers are better than silence on Christmas Eve." Slowly, others joined. The young couple from 2A with their newborn. The teacher from 5C who'd been conducting classes from her kitchen table. The teenager from 1B whose senior year had evaporated into virtual learning. "Why don't we each share something?" Henry suggested. "Maybe, something we lost this year, and something we found." The silence stretched until Maria, surprising herself, unmuted her microphone. "I lost my job," she said quietly. 30 years of cooking, gone. But I found that my neighbors leave groceries at my door. I don't know who, but every week, there's something there. David felt his chest tighten. He'd been one of those neighbors, using his dwindling savings to help others in the building after noticing Maria's situation. I lost my grandmother, the teenager, Marcus, spoke up. Couldn't even say goodbye properly. But I found music. Started learning guitar since there was nothing else to do. Wrote my first song last week. Play it for us, Henry encouraged. As Marcus fumbled for his guitar, Emma watched through exhausted eyes. These people had lost so much, yet here they were, sharing their pain and their small victories with strangers on a computer screen. I lost my company, David finally said, turning on his camera. Everything I worked for. But I found. He paused, looking at his mother hovering in the doorway. I found that failure isn't the end. And that my parents' love doesn't depend on my success. One by one, they shared. The teacher spoke of losing her classroom but finding new ways to reach struggling students. The young parents talked about bringing life into a world that seemed to be ending, finding hope in their daughter's first smile. When it was Emma's turn, she almost didn't speak. Then the words tumbled out. I lost my faith in medicine's ability to save everyone. Lost colleagues. Lost patients who became friends. But I found strength I didn't know existed. And I found that even when we can't save everyone, showing up still matters. You're the nurse from 3C, Maria said suddenly. You're the one who held my father's hand in the hospital. The one who made sure he wasn't alone. Emma's eyes filled with tears she'd been holding back for months. Mr. Hernandez. He talked about you constantly. Said you made the best mole in the city. The call continued past midnight, stories weaving between the participants, creating connections that transcended their computer screens. Marcus played his song, a raw, honest piece about finding light in darkness. The young parents introduced their baby, who gurgled at the camera. Henry told jokes that weren't funny but made everyone laugh anyway. David found himself privately messaging Emma, offering to help with grocery runs so she wouldn't have to risk exposure shopping after long shifts. Maria exchanged recipes with the couple in 2A, promising to teach them her secret ingredient when pandemic restrictions lifted. Marcus started giving virtual guitar lessons to Henry, who'd always wanted to learn. As December turned to January, their virtual gatherings became weekly events. David started a food delivery system for the building's elderly residents. Emma coordinated with other healthcare workers to ensure no one was sleeping in their cars alone. Maria began cooking extra portions, leaving them at neighbors' doors with notes of encouragement. The building's WhatsApp group, created out of necessity, became a lifeline. Job postings appeared when David finally found work at a nonprofit. Celebration messages flew when Marcus got accepted to college with a music scholarship. Photos were shared when Maria finally hugged her grandson after vaccines became available. Henry, the catalyst for it all, passed away peacefully in March 2021. At his small funeral, the building residents discovered he'd been a social worker for 40 years, dedicated to bringing communities together. His final act had been that simple note on a door. He saved us, Maria said at the service. When we were all drowning in our own apartments, he threw us a life preserver made of Wi-Fi and compassion. As 2020 ended and 2021 began, the residents of the building had discovered something profound. Hope wasn't a grand gesture or a miracle cure. It was David leaving groceries at Maria's door. It was Emma finding the strength to return to the hospital each day. It was Marcus's guitar drifting through thin walls. It was choosing connection over isolation, even when connection meant pixelated faces on a screen. They'd entered 2020 as strangers separated by floors and ceilings. They emerged as a family forged by shared loss and unexpected grace. The pandemic had taken much from them, but it had also revealed a truth as old as humanity itself. In our darkest moments, we find light not by looking up, but by looking at each other. Maria finally changed her calendar. On the December page, she wrote in large letters, "The year we found each other."